A lot of women don't fall in love with who a man is. They fall in love with who he keeps almost becoming. And listen, that almost will wear your ass out because potential can be very seductive, especially when you're young. I want to be fair about that. When you're choosing a partner early in life, nobody is fully formed. Everybody is still becoming. You don't have the whole finished product in front of you. So you're looking at his values, his habits, his choices, how he treats people, how he handles stress, how he responds when he's wrong. And you're trying to figure out what all of that might grow into. That's normal. That's part of building with somebody. But that's also why discernment matters so much because there's a big difference between being with someone who is actively growing and being with someone who has just enough potential to keep you waiting. And a lot of women know that feeling. There's good in him, there's intelligence. There are these flashes of tenderness or maturity that make you think, okay, that's the man I know is in there. Then he'll have one really good conversation or apologize in a way that sounds almost like accountability. And suddenly you're giving the pattern another 6 months. That's where it gets dangerous because now you're not just loving the man in front of you, you're emotionally invested in the man you believe is under there somewhere. And a glimpse is powerful. A glimpse will have you packing patience you didn't need to bring. It'll have you building a whole house on a maybe. That's what potential does. It makes you over invest. You start giving credit for intentions. You fill in the gaps with hope. You treat effort like growth, even when it never becomes consistent enough to create safety. Now you're in a relationship with a man, a memory, a possibility, and a project. That's too many people in one relationship. Be for real. I had to sit with that in my own marriage because for a long time, I wasn't just looking at what was happening, I was also looking at what I believed could happen if certain things finally clicked. Maybe he would understand. Maybe he would heal. Maybe maturity would land. Maybe he would see what I saw. But at some point, I had to ask myself, am I responding to who he's choosing to be or who I believe he could become if he finally decided to meet the moment? That question will bother you because potential gives you just enough evidence to keep arguing reality. And that's the problem. A man can be capable of more and still not be choosing more. He can have a good ass heart and still not be a good partner to you. There might be emotional depth somewhere inside him, but if he can't access it in a way that makes the relationship feel safe, what are you actually building with? He can be not a bad man and still not be the man you can build with. That's where a lot of us get caught. We think if we can see the potential, we're supposed to keep waiting on it. But seeing what someone could become doesn't obligate you to stay while they decide whether they want to become it. And sometimes, if we're being honest, potential becomes the place where women hide from the truth because focusing on who he could be keeps you from fully grieving who he keeps choosing to be. It keeps you from admitting the relationship is built more on possibility than partnership. It also keeps you from facing how much of your life has been organized around waiting for him to grow the fuck up, get it, follow through, and turn the glimpse into something you can actually depend on. That kind of waiting changes you. You turn into somebody fluent in his potential. You can explain him better than he explains himself. You can tell people what he meant. You can translate the good intention behind the bad behavior. You can build a whole defense case for a version of him that hasn't shown up consistently enough to testify. And friend, at some point, you have to ask, am I in love with him or am I in love with my ability to see what he might become? Because those are different relationships. And one of them might be mostly happening inside your head. That doesn't mean the love was fake. It means some of the relationship may have been built on imagined follow through. And that's painful to admit. It was painful for me because when you finally stop investing in potential, you don't just grieve the person, you grieve the future you kept assigning to them, the home you thought would feel different, the conversations you thought you'd finally have, the softness you thought would come when they matured, the version of love you kept believing was right around the corner. That grief is real, even if the version of him you're grieving never fully existed. And that's what potential can do. It'll have you grieving a man who never actually showed up. So, no, I'm not saying don't date somebody who's still growing. Everybody is growing, or at least Lord, we hope. But real growth has movement. It has ownership. It has changed behavior. You don't have to drag out of somebody every 6 months like a seasonal decoration. Potential isn't partnership. It's not safety. It's not reciprocity. And it's definitely not enough to build a life on if the actual person in front of you keeps choosing the same raggedy patterns. chance. So if you're waiting on the version of him you believe is in there, I get it. Sometimes you can see the possibilities so clearly it feels irresponsible to walk away from it. But his potential is not your assignment. His becoming is not your responsibility. And your life cannot be the waiting room for a man who keeps almost showing up, because potential will have you grieving a man who never actually arrived.